It's March 2026, and someone just published insider trading records for the upcoming apocalypse. 3 million pages, thousands of videos, thousands of images, released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which is the legislative equivalent of a margin call disguised as community outreach. The people named in those files are currently serving in the White House, running a war in the Middle East, and negotiating reconstruction contracts for the countries they are still bombing. The house is on fire, and the arsonist is pitching condos on CNN. But the Transparency Act is not transparency. One faction liquidated another faction's position onto the public market. The filing cabinet got emptied during a hostile takeover. The public thinks it's an IPO. They named it after the thing it isn't. Washington's oldest trick. Its only surviving industry. 3 million pages is a very effective hiding place. Nobody reads 3 million pages, unless they're paid or they're unwell. I'm the latter. The filing cabinet is open. The problem is that filing cabinets don't trend. I don't have intelligence sources. I have a search bar and a problem. The problem with conspiracy theorists isn't that conspiracies don't exist. The problem is they find the presents in the closet and conclude Santa is running a burglary ring. They imagine a mahogany room, 12 men, a console with labeled buttons, crash economy, start war, release pandemic, and Dave from IT filing a ticket because the apocalypse console froze during a firmware update. The childish part isn't believing secret groups exist. The childish part is the button. Nobody needs a button if they have the schedule. That's insider trading 101. They don't press buttons. They place bets. And they win, not because they control the market, but because they're standing close enough to the scoreboard to read it before you. Scale it up. Replace the stock market with geopolitics. Replace the stock with the country. Earnings reports with intelligence briefings. The SEC with nobody, because there is no regulatory body for civilizational insider trading. The mechanism looks familiar. Anticipation, positioning, monetization. The prospectus is a body count. The dividend is a government contract. Jeffrey Epstein's career reads like a graduate rotation at a firm nobody names on LinkedIn. Dalton School, Bear Stearns, Douglas Lees, Ehud Barak, education, finance, arms, intelligence. 4 departments, 4 mentors, cross-functional training if cross-functional training was designed by the writers of the Americans. He starts at Dalton at 21, a college dropout teaching the children of Manhattan families whose net worth needed commas and offshore counsel. Learn the names, learn the parents, learn who signs the checks, customer acquisition. Then Bear Stearns, where capital moves, where it pools, who controls the valves. Then Douglas Lees, one of the biggest arms traffickers on earth. Naturally, the next step after tutoring rich kids is Iran-Contra adjacent consulting. Then Ehud Barak, former Israeli prime minister, former head of military intelligence. The kind of mentor who doesn't write a recommendation letter. He writes a clearance level. Education, finance, arms, intelligence. It's not a resume, it's systems onboarding. The Epstein files don't show an anecdote. They show a business model. Libya, July 2011. Gaddafi hadn't fallen yet. The bullets were still in the air. Epstein's circle was already calculating commissions on $80 billion in frozen Libyan assets. Recovery fee, 10 to 25%. Pipeline to $100 billion in reconstruction spend. Their own words. The real carrot is if we can become their go-to guys. The country hadn't finished dying, and they were already bidding on the estate sale. That's not a conspiracy. That's a trade. Then Qatar, June 2017. Saudi Arabia and the UAE cut ties, closed borders, sealed airspace. The diplomatic equivalent of deactivating someone's badge while they're still at the desk. Within weeks, Epstein was emailing Jabor Al-Thani, advising Qatar to stop kicking and arguing, recognize Israel, or put $1 billion into a fund he was proposing. His case study was Narendra Modi. Quote, the Indian Prime Minister Modi took advice and danced and sang in Israel for the benefit of the US president. They had met a few weeks ago. It worked. Caps lock his. Typos his. Regime legitimacy pitched in the formatting standards of a DM from your uncle who just discovered Bitcoin. By November 2018, Epstein had brokered a secret meeting between former Qatari PM Hamad bin Jassim and former Israeli PM Ehud Barak at One Hyde Park in London. Just left HBJ. He would like to sit with you, he wrote to Barak. The message before it. Make clear that I don't work for Mossad, followed by a smiley face. Barak replied with a thumbs up, a tongue-out emoji, a lightning bolt, and an Israeli flag. The Oslo Accords had formal letterhead. This one had a tongue-out emoji. Then the one that connects to the war you're watching right now. April 7th, 2015. A confidential memo titled Pakistan Covert Deal with Saudi on Yemen landed in Epstein's inbox. Not the Pentagon's, not Langley's. The inbox of a man whose primary professional qualification was access to underage girls. Troop positions, jet fighter capabilities, Chinese avionics versus American systems, naval logistics disguised as anti-piracy operations. Everything you need to start a war, formatted like a trip itinerary. The memo was written by Nasra Hassan, a former UN official, marked strictly confi, his spelling, apparently how you spell classified when you're in a hurry. Forwarded same day by the president of the International Peace Institute, Terje Rod Larsen, Norway's most famous diplomat, and Epstein's self-described best friend. A Peace Institute president forwarding classified military intelligence about a covert commando deployment to a convicted child sex trafficker. The insider doesn't need the button. The insider needs the schedule. And the schedule came same day. Alan Dershowitz told U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta that Epstein belonged to intelligence. The charges were reduced. An alleged predator walked because someone whispered national security in the right ear. That's not a bug. It's the benefits package. The system didn't fail to convict Epstein. It recognized one of its own and held the door open. Prince Andrew received a confidential British government report on investment opportunities in Afghanistan, a state secret. He emailed it directly to Epstein. The Crown's intelligence went from Buckingham Palace to a private citizen in another country via the forward button. 5 centuries of empire, and the security architecture is Outlook. 1 email is a scandal. 2 is a pattern. 3 is a business model. The same Rod Larsen who forwarded the Yemen memo built the Oslo Accords. A Norwegian historian spent 20 years researching those accords and concluded, a deal built entirely on Israel's premises, Norway performing neutrality like a keynote sponsor. 20 years to confirm what the forwarded email showed in 3 seconds. But here's the switchboard turning inward. Rod Larsen wrote official letters to U.S. immigration, securing O1 visas for young Russian women in Epstein's orbit. Extraordinary abilities, research roles. They were models. Some were trafficked. The visa category was designed for Nobel laureates. The paperwork was immaculate. The women were not. Same desk, same signature. One day, classified commando logistics. Next day, recommendation letters for trafficked women. The International Peace Institute was a switchboard, and the switchboard didn't care what kind of call it was routing. December 2018, Epstein emails Ariane de Rothschild to explain that he and his people are the real Vienna bankers and have been around forever. His pitch? When Hitler was poor, he lived in a charity home financed by 3 wealthy Jewish families, the Rothschilds, the Epsteins, and the Gutmans. Ariane responds, conspiracy theory. Epstein insists, we've been around for the longest time. A great pitch. By a convicted sex offender, texting regularly with Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Bill Gates, positioning the Holocaust as a credential to a Rothschild. Dynastic mythology, a Hitler anecdote, and a shelf life measured in months. Within a year, the presenter was dead in federal custody. Rod Larsen's severance tells you what the information was worth. Epstein's will was amended 2 days before he died in his cell. $5 million to each of Rod Larsen's children. The going rate for a forwarding finger at the International Peace Institute, $5 million per child. February 2026. Rod Larsen's wife resigned as Norway's ambassador. Security clearance revoked. Økokrim opened corruption investigations into Rod Larsen, Yule, and former PM Torbjørn Jagland. Jagland chaired the committee that hands out the Nobel Peace Prize. He is now under investigation for the kind of activity that typically disqualifies you from receiving one. The filing cabinet didn't just open. It emptied across the entire Norwegian diplomatic establishment. In 2017, the FBI reported that Chabad Lubavitch was doing everything it can to co-opt the Trump presidency. In 1984, a Lubavitcher Rebbe told Netanyahu to hasten the coming of the Messiah. Hasten. Speed up a schedule. Same mechanism. Read the direction events are already moving. Accelerate. Netanyahu, Kushner, and Witkoff are all connected through Chabad Lubavitch. Witkoff was sent to negotiate peace, then went on television constructing justification for war. The pre-show played out in real time, and Kushner is now positioning for post-war reconstruction contracts in Gaza, Ukraine, Lebanon, and Iran. Diplomacy as site visit, due diligence as body count. 2 acceleration programs, 2 different end users. The Christian version, Jews build the temple, then burn in hell for it. The Lubavitch version, Jews build the temple, and the Messiah descends. They agree on the construction, they disagree on the invoice. I'm just a guy reading the news. But sequences aren't theories. They're things that happened, in an order I didn't schedule and can't unread. Epstein read the Yemen schedule in 2015. Kushner is writing the Iran schedule in 2026. Different desk, same floor, same Houthis. When one faction dumps another faction's files onto a government website, it doesn't look like an attack. It looks like transparency. When one faction sabotages a negotiation, it looks like incompetence. When one faction eliminates the interlocutor who could have signed the peace deal, it looks like strategy. The genius of internetwork conflict is that it's invisible to anyone who still thinks there's only one desk. Congratulations. You just read 5,000 words about the architecture. But the architecture was built on the bodies of underage girls. The operation became the leverage. The leverage became the network. And the network was built on girls. Everything else is just the filing. Applied Heresy is free, mildly alarming, and heretical by design. Subscribe below. Share with someone who still thinks the Transparency Act was about transparency.